I'm responsible. It's on me. I'll take care of it. How many times have each of us said these words? How many times have we wanted others to say them to us? What would it feel like for God to say, I'm responsible? In a midrash told by the rabbis, that's exactly what happens. Here's the story. Abraham was walking when he saw a birah doleket. The word birah is commonly translated as a castle or a large building, the capital. The word doleket, though, is a little bit more complicated, but it's related to the word lehadlik, the word we use in the blessings to light candles on Shabbat and holidays. So we know that it has something to do with fire. So when Abraham sees that the castle is seemingly on fire, according to the Midrash, he says, how could this be? Is it possible that this huge castle does not have a caretaker? Is no one looking after it? And then God appears and says, I am the caretaker. I am the owner. I am the one responsible for this place. If I came across a building on fire, I think that's what I would want to hear. I would want to know that someone is watching out. Almost everywhere we look these days, I don't think it's an overstatement to say that it has felt as if the palace is on fire, that the world is burning. Political violence here in the US, the hostages still somehow aren't home, the war in Gaza continues, school shootings somehow continue to occur, and anti-Semitism is on the rise, just to name a few things. I've heard from so many of you that you can identify with Abraham in this story, questioning who is the caretaker of this palace? How comforting would it be for someone to calmly say, don't worry, I'm responsible and I've got it under control. Here's what we're going to do to take care of things. But that's not quite what God says, is it? God just says the first part, I'm responsible, but not the second. In writing about this story, Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sachs explains, God gives an answer that is not an answer. God says, in effect, I'm here, but without explaining the flames. God does not attempt to put out the fire. It is as if instead, God were calling for help. Rabbi Sachs continues, God made the building, but humans set the fire, and only humanity can put out the flames. In saying, I am the owner, God is calling out to Abraham for partnership. God is calling on Abraham to take the next step. Abraham does not look away, and though he is not the one to say, I've got it, he continues to engage. He cares enough to stop and ask what's going on. And through that, he also takes on some responsibility. To be clear, when I say responsibility here, what I mean is the ability to respond to life's demands, to take ownership over our actions and related consequences, and fulfill our duties and obligations to ourselves and the world. Can Abraham be a model for us of how to engage with each other, with our community, and with the larger world? How can we take the time to stop, to say, I care, to engage even when it's hard, to ask who is in charge here, and what is my role in helping God to put out the fire? There's an almost endless amount of Jewish material written about responsibility, about obligation, about what binds each of us to the other. The rabbis detailed extensive and diverse obligations, writes modern Jewish philosopher Mara Benjamin. These obligations that people owe to parents, teachers, the community as a whole, one's fellow Jews, non-Jews, the non-Jewish government, and God. In other words, we are supposed to take on many, many responsibilities. We have a seemingly endless amount of instructions on how to be responsible members of society. One of these instructions about what it means to be accountable to one another more generally is found in a Talmudic conversation about what should happen when someone breaks an oath or does something wrong. The rabbis ask if the sinner's family should also be considered guilty. Are they also responsible? They go back and forth. Some say that if someone sins, then the whole family is in fact guilty. And then another one says, just because one person commits a wrongdoing, that doesn't mean the whole family has. They continue to disagree for a bit, to go back and forth as they are wont to do. But ultimately, the rabbis land on this: Kol Yisrael arevim ze bazeh. All of the people Israel are responsible for each other. This line hopefully sounds familiar. And the medieval commentator Ritva expands upon the line this way: even though the commandments are placed upon each individual, all of us are guarantors of one another. This fits right in with our TBJ theme of the high holidays this year, though slightly expanded. We're all responsible for each other. I'm also reminded of how this appears throughout our liturgy of the season. The vidui we recite, our confession, is in the plural. We have sinned, we have cheated, etc. If one of us has sinned, we all have. Rabbi Shai Held defines it this way: my people, right or wrong, if right, to be kept right, and if wrong, to be set right. We are obligated to right each other's wrongs. We are all responsible for each other. We are each other's guarantors. Now, I want to acknowledge that there are a few very deep tensions here. One is a question that I believe many of us ask quite often: to whom are we actually responsible? Are we only obligated to others like us, or are we supposed to be held accountable to the whole world? I suspect each of us might have a different answer to this question. This exact tension of particularism versus universalism plays out around us all the time. After all, we are modern people living in a mostly secular society, and we're also here, identifying as part of the Jewish people. One way to approach this question is found in a conversation about a line of Torah between two rabbis, Eliezer and Yitzchak. You don't need to remember the names, this isn't a quiz. So Eliezer and Yitzchak are discussing why the Torah instructs us to return the lost ox of an outsider. Why would we need to return an ox to someone outside of our community, they ask. Are we responsible for their actions and lost property too? Rabbi Eliezer says an outsider is one who is no longer part of the community. Easy. But Rabbi Yitzchak has a different interpretation. He says an outsider could be a Jew, someone from the community who has behaved badly for a moment, maybe somebody who's made a mistake. We return the ox because this so-called outsider may be an outsider only temporarily. Depending on a variety of circumstances, there are times when those who we may perceive to be outsiders are in fact our allies. And there are also times when those who are insiders couldn't feel further away. The rabbis give us permission to think of people as other, for the obligations to them to be different. But we are still obligated to them. In this current moment, we're pretty quick to name someone as an outsider or an enemy, and also to keep them there. But the rabbis show us that moving from an outsider to insider and back again happens all the time, and we must be open to that shifting dynamic. Another deep tension is, what do we do when I think there's a right way of doing things, and let's say Cantor Reinstein, for example, thinks there's another? That would never happen. Can we stay in community even when we disagree, maybe about something deep and important? Feeling obligated to those who see things differently is so hard. All too often, we think we need to choose a group, left versus right, religious versus secular, Republican versus Democrat, and just stay surrounded by those who think like us. A bubble is pretty comfortable. But who do you agree with 100% of the time? I'm sure not your parents, your kids, spouses, teachers, students, government officials, maybe your clergy. The list could go on and on. We disagree with those we love and care about most deeply because it's a way of sharing our priorities, what matters to us most. Hopefully, though, we stay in the conversation, in the relationship. We do not walk away. After all, we here are part of a synagogue, a community that by design is supposed to welcome people who may not agree with each other. We are not in the business of being coercive or of telling people how to think or feel. We are here to help each other develop our spiritual lives, to find meaning with each other, to fix the world together. We are still obligated to each other if, or more likely when, we don't agree. This might be the hardest part about obligation. In recent years, we've seen how families and friends no longer feel comfortable getting together on holidays or special occasions due to differences in opinion. And recent disagreements we've seen around the world have led to violence and even death. I don't think it's an overstatement to say that the castle is on fire. But we also need to remember that the only way to put out that fire is to keep showing up, even when we don't always feel like it. We can respond to God's call for help. We can help those that are weakest in society. We can care for other human beings, and we can keep our humanity and wits about us. We need to rebuild our societies and communities so that we can take seriously our obligations to each other, sharing in each other's joys and achievements, and holding each other in sorrow and disappointment. We can hold others accountable, and they can hold us accountable in return. On the high holidays, we gather as a community to say that the world can be different, that we can be different, and we are the ones that have to make it so. Now, I'm not trying to be naive or Pollyannish. I do not want to dismiss the complexities and challenges of communal and interpersonal disagreements. And of course, we cannot actually be responsible for everyone and everything. There are limits: time, money, and energy. Rather, I'm suggesting that our world depends on each of us seeing ourselves as responsible for one another, even for those who we may perceive to be outsiders. We must show up to bring the world we want into being, a world that is full of love and generosity, care and responsibility. One of my favorite teachers, Mr. Rogers, puts it this way: we live in a world in which we need to share responsibility. It's easy to say, not my child, not my community, not my world, not my problem. But he continues, then there are those who see the need and respond. I consider those people my heroes. Let's be heroes. Kol Yisrael Aravim Ze Bazeh. We're all responsible for one another. Before I close, I want to go back to the story of Abraham and God and the Birah Doleket, the burning castle, because there's another way to understand it, and perhaps to understand even our world at this moment. Was the castle actually on fire? As I mentioned at the beginning, the word doleket is a little complicated. We know that it relates to candles or fire, but it can also mean a glow. So there's some ambiguity here. There's potential for two very, very different stories. What does Abraham encounter? Is the palace burning down, or is it aglow, radiant with light? Maybe Abraham is asking, how could this be? How is this castle so beautiful, glowing, and lit from within? And God's response? I am the caretaker of this castle. I am responsible for its beauty, and thus So are we. One story read two completely different ways, one of light and one of destruction. Can we see both the beauty and the fire that's in our world? In any given moment, it's very easy to see one or the other, to see the castle on fire or the castle glowing, to see light or destruction. Is it possible to see both? If all we see is heartache, can we still find beauty? And if we only want to see beauty, can we be reminded that there's still so much that needs to be fixed? Holding both the beauty and the pain of our world helps us understand what it means to be responsible for each other. We can celebrate at weddings and mourn at funerals, work on a Tikkun Olam project, and engage in deep and challenging conversations, visit people who are sick, and take responsibility when we've done wrong. Abraham does not run away or give up. He creates a partnership with God, just as we do. We are the caretakers. We are responsible. We can make houses glow, and we can put out a fire. This year, may we be blessed with hands that can prevent destruction, hearts open to all different kinds of responsibilities, and eyes that can find the beauty amidst it all. Our world actually depends on it. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.